Good afternoon. It's Friday the 24th of October 2025, just after 1 o'clock, and welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Mike Robinson. My co-host in studio today, Patrick Henningsen. Welcome to the programme, Patrick.
Great to be with you, Mike.
And we'll be joined today by Basil Valentine and David Miller. Now, later in the programme, we're going to be covering the acquittal of Soldier F over the killings on Bloody Sunday in Northern Ireland. And we'll be looking at the increasing tensions between the US and Russia. And in fact, we'll have a little bit at the end about on the latest from Starmer on digital ID. But we're going to begin with censorship and medical censorship, Patrick, and really censorship of anyone speaking out about Gaza.
Well, these are three really important stories, huge potentially precedent cases here. And it's really a trifecta, Mike, this week. The first is the story of Dr. Rame Aladwan, and she was arrested in her home a few days ago, and then she's being put on double jeopardy with the General Medical Council, trying to basically, the Israeli lobby and pressure groups want to take away her medical license, her ability to practice medicine. The other is the lawyer for Hamas, who is representing Hamas regarding the proscription label of the group in the UK courts. His name is Fahad Ansari. He has also been arrested under the Terrorism Act. We'll look at his case as well as the we call them fast jury trials or no jury trials, speed trials with no jury for all the Palestine Action activists who've been arrested. That's going through right now. Let's take a look at all three of those real briefly, and then we're going to connect with Basil Valentine for some analysis on this. But first and foremost here, and by the way, I could only find this article that had a fair headline. The mainstream is just out to destroy this Dr. Rame Aladwan, and this headline, British Palestinian NHS doctor silenced by UK Medical Council after arrest over pro-Palestine comments. But this is the thing, Mike, when you go to Google here, I typed in her name and I'm looking for, and this is what pops up. They're making, the whole story is about her necklace. She had a number 7 around her neck. So the Daily Mail, the Times, everybody's all over that. And just to scroll through here, and it's anti-Semite, calling for jihad. They're going on about her number 7 charm, her terror charm around her neck. You can't, the press are not interested in the issue of free speech and due process and her basic rights. And the fact she's being put through double jeopardy here. Now, she had a hearing yesterday, Mike. We thought there was going to be a decision, but they've just kicked the can down the road a bit further, and she's going to have to be put on trial for the exact same thing she was acquitted for just a few weeks ago, and with no new evidence presented. Here she is, right outside the steps of the hearing.
I'm basically here again 4 weeks later for the exact same speech that a panel here, an independent panel, said was fine. Just because the Israeli Jewish lobby has an issue with what I said and the fact that I won. They don't want the movement, they don't want people to be able to make the same arguments, to be able to have that freedom of speech. Shame! Shame! We pay the General Medical Council to make sure that we're safe for British patients, not to make sure that what we say doesn't upset Israel or the Israeli lobby. That's why we're here. This is not how our medical regulator, and certainly I'm shocked that the MPTS have buckled. I mean, the MPTS have today themselves determined that their ruling that they made only 4 weeks ago cannot stand, that they cannot push back against the GMC who are acting on behalf of Israel. That should worry us all. That should worry every single British doctor and patient and citizen. This is independent regulation being influenced by a foreign hostile entity that just murdered hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and bombed hospitals, raped doctors to death, and kidnapped and tortured them.
Makes a pretty strong argument there. So they're trying to prevent her from doing her job because of statements she made, I believe, at a previous rally regarding Palestine or with Palestine Action or something like this. So the other case here, Mike, is this one. We'll bring this up on screen. This is the lawyer who is UK lawyer representing Hamas over the prescription label here. His name is Fahad Ansari, and this is his page up at Cage International. They're advocating on his behalf. He has been detained under the Terrorism Act and digitally strip searched, and he's not given proper due process or rights in defending himself as a UK qualified lawyer. Here's his statement.
But to kick me out of court, to kick my lawyers out of court at this point and say, we now need to go into closed and we're going to actually have a conversation with the judge, that you will never know what happened there. You'll never know the justification. You'll never see the material. That is simply unfair. And you ask any child whether this is fair, they will say, how could that be fair? You didn't hear my side of the story. But we become conditioned to accept unfairness. The last 25 years of war and terror has conditioned the British public to accept secret evidence in our courts, to accept an abandonment of the rule of law, to accept people being arrested for terrorism for holding up placards. So we have been fighting this for over 2 decades. Now is not the time to back off, and the fact that all of you guys are here today really encourages me. It's not about me. It's not the fact that I'm a solicitor, I'm a lawyer. The principle is greater than this. Nobody should be allowed to take your phone at a border without suspicion. Without suspicion, I need to stress that. And do a digital strip search on you under the compulsion that if you don't comply, you will be convicted of terrorism. That is not what should be happening. And it's not about me, I need to stress this. It is about all of us. And most fundamentally, it is about Palestine, free Palestine.
And he does have a fundraiser here. We'll put that up on screen. This is Crowd Justice, and he is raising money for his defense on this. Obviously, Mike, it's such an important issue. We're talking about basic rights here that actually affects everybody, including some of our journalistic colleagues who have been subject to this type of treatment as well. And the third story, we'll bring this up on screen right now. This is from Craig Murray's website, and I just remind people, Craig Murray is one of the greatest court reporters probably in history for what he's done over the years, doing the hard work, the yeoman's labor from the gallery of courtrooms. But here he is, 36-minute trials and no jury, Starmer's fascist mass courts. What's he talking about here? Well, he's talking about all of the people who've been arrested for saying they support Palestine Action, a direct action grassroots group here. And this is from Murray. The plans are devised by Justice Michael Snow. He is the epitome of judicial prejudice. When Julian Assange appeared before Snow in the first hearing after being dragged from the embassy, Snow called Assange a narcissist, even though Assange had said nothing but to confirm his name and had no evidence that had been led to that arrest. So, and he goes on here. This is describing the situation. Snow's decreed 2,000 people charged under Section 13 of the Terrorism Act for supporting Palestine Action, who's just been recently labeled a terrorist group by the British government, to be tried in batches of 5 at a rate of 10 people per day, giving 36 court minutes for each defendant. This is a farce, says Murray, a spectacle, a mass show trial, and the 36 minutes includes both prosecution and defense cases and cross-examination. Pretty incredible, isn't it? So with that, I want to bring on our guest, Basil Valentine. He is a political analyst based in the UK. Basil, welcome to the program. Let's start in order here, Basil. Well, the first one is the case of Dr. Rame Aladwan. Your thoughts on how this proceedings have unfolded and what the implications are. Go ahead, Basil.
Well, after Rame was acquitted by the Medical Tribunal Service last month, Wes Streeting started bleating about how he disagreed with the decision. He has no business to do so because it's an independent professional body. And then only last week, Keir Starmer started making noises about changing legislation to interfere with these independent professional bodies and their ability to regulate, be it doctors, lawyers, or anybody else. It so happens that Rame is a doctor, but the same may apply to solicitors or any other regulated sector, or indeed trade unionists across the employment spectrum. Now, the tribunal found last month that Rame's speech was protected under the European Convention of Human Rights. It said nothing illegal at all. But yesterday, the General Medical Council claimed that they didn't like the flavour of what she was saying, which is an interesting thing. And she was silenced when she attempted to address the panel as well. Silenced there. And of course, Rame is silenced in the corporate media, never allowed to present her case on any major network or anything, because, of course, her case comes across as perfectly reasonable, humane, and humanitarian. She's British of Palestinian origin and a direct victim of genocide. That's the whole point. And that's why she's in Britain in the first place and not practicing medicine in Palestine. So the reason why her case has been heard again is because the so-called campaign against anti-Semitism lobbied the government, who bowed to their pressure, to go for this retrial. Now we'll find out in 2 weeks' time. Basically, what they're trying to do is alter the terms of reference or the way that what she said was interpreted to somehow, the aim of the exercise, find her guilty when the next hearing comes around. It's absolutely disgraceful, and these establishment organs that sort of claim to represent the rule of law are in fact doing the quite opposite. They're undermining the rule of law by undermining due process and independent bodies like the Medical Practitioners Tribunal Service. Incidentally, this video, which we can see as well, of her arrest, the police informed the GMC, the General Medical Council, about this, gave them full details of her arrest, even though the GMC themselves had said to Rame back in May, in reference to a previous arrest when she was a supporter of the now prescribed Palestine Action, that they, the GMC, were not interested in mere arrests, only if she was charged and convicted. And yet that seems now to have changed. And there is collusion between the police and the GMC. The theory being that, it's grist to the mill, isn't it? To say, we've got a wrong un here. Look, we had to arrest her only earlier this week. So, no smoke without fire and all that sort of thing, even though, of course, the arrest was on grounds that were largely spurious. It was very much, I think, designed just to change the optics in advance of this week's hearing.
Yes, a good point. A lot of people are suspecting the same. And on the case of Fahad Ansari, we'll bring up this incredible quote here. This is amazing. He says, "I refuse to participate in a fundamentally unfair process." He's not going to comply in this legal process. He says, "I cannot trust the system where the British state's allegation, quote, evidence is kept secret from me, kept secret from my lawyers and members of the public, and where any attempts to defend myself would only serve to feed the intelligence apparatus that is targeting both me and my clients. This is not about national security. It's about using a rigged system to harass lawyers like me who represent clients the state dislikes and who would prefer were denied any legal representation whatsoever." Your thoughts on this case? This is so important, Basil, because this really comes to the core of due process and jurisprudence. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Ansari was detained at the port of Holyhead on his return from a family holiday in Ireland, and was questioned by the police about his religion, about his views on Palestine, things like that. And they took his phone off him, even though it has 15 years worth of confidential information on it. And he, because of this, ludicrous misuse of terrorism legislation, is due to be the victim of a truly Kafkaesque 1984 type procedure where the police will present evidence to a judge entirely in secret. Neither Mr. Ansari nor his legal team are allowed to know what that evidence is, nor any member of the public or press. Now, as a counterweight to that, a special advocate is appointed to represent Mr. Ansari's interests. He is allowed in the court, but he's not allowed to speak to Mr. Ansari or Mr. Ansari's legal team after the evidence has been presented. I mean, this is absolutely off the charts. If this sort of thing went on in Soviet Russia, we would have laughed about how ludicrous it was, this kind of show trial. How on earth is somebody supposed to be able to defend themselves if the evidence presented before them, they're not made aware of it? But of course, Mr. Ansari's real crime is that together with the barrister Frank McGuinness, they are challenging the prescription of Hamas, including the political wing. Let's remember that Hamas is not prescribed in the vast majority of countries around the world, where it is regarded as a legitimate, either the legitimate government of Gaza, where it was elected, or at least, at the very least, a legitimate political organization. But after years of lobbying by the Israel lobby in the UK, it was prescribed as a terrorist organization, and therefore anybody seeking to represent it is also in the crosshairs of the UK national security state.
Yes, and just briefly, we just got a few seconds left, but I'll bring this Justice Snow offhanded comment here, Basil. We'll bring this up on screen. I'm satisfied that the time is sufficient, 36 minutes per case in these massive show trials. I'm not going to give any more time. Your only remedy is the High Court. It's a bit harsh, isn't it, Basil? I mean, to say the least.
Well, this is absolutely ludicrous and completes this trifecta of miscarriages of justice in motion. It's been decided that the defendants of the recent Palestine Action protests who held up innocuous signs saying, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action." Yes, the 70-something clergymen, assorted Quakers, peace campaigners, and the rest are to be tried in batches of 5 at a time, each defendant given no more than 36 minutes, and crucially, only in front of a judge, no jury. So this is a mass show trial again, Soviet-esque, and remains to be seen whether or not there's a legal challenge to this, because, of course, we've also got the question of the judicial review of the prescription of Palestine Action. That's due to go ahead after the government was defeated last week in its challenge to the judicial review. The idea is that they want to try and get people convicted before the ban is overturned, because the likelihood is it will be overturned because it is a misuse of the Terrorism Act once again.
It's extraordinary. Basil Valentine, thank you for this analysis, and we will reconnect with you during the extra time after the program. So for our viewers, Basil will be rejoining us after the main news program.
Thank you very much, Basil, for that. Okay, now let's move on then to Professor David Miller. Now he's defending an ongoing case brought by the so-called Campaign Against Anti-Semitism for 4 X posts, which they claim were menacing. Now, just want to show his crowdfunder on screen here. Apparently not on one of the major platforms, but we'll come on to this again in a second. David posted on X a couple of days ago, "I've just won a significant victory against the comically named Campaign Against Anti-Semitism at Westminster Magistrates Court. The CAA is attempting to mount a private prosecution against me for sending 4 supposedly menacing posts on X. But today the judge ruled that the CAA had withheld significant information from the court when they had originally applied for the summons against me. Then I have 28 days to comply with an order to disclose all relevant communications between their directors, trustees and staff on the question of whether they were seeking to silence me or to undermine my employment appeal tribunal, which is scheduled for next month." So David joins us now to discuss this. Welcome to the program, David. Just give us some more detail on what's happening in the court.
So in my specific case, the case of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, which is acting as a private prosecutor to take me to court for these 4 posts on X, which are said to be menacing. Now, I should say, because it's relevant, that this is under the Communications Act of 2003, Section 127, and that's exactly the same section which the Metropolitan Police have charged or are going to charge Rama Adwan with some of her posts. So that's a very interesting development, because it shows, I think, the police, more evidence of the police being pressured by the CAA and taking on really quite ludicrous and obscure legal powers in an attempt to stop people from speaking out about the genocide. So that's one thing to note. Now, these 4 posts, they are suggesting that although I called for the maximum accountability under the law of Zionists in this country and in other countries, that what I really meant by that, what was in my mind, or what I intended to communicate, was that really that people should find Zionists and or Jews and attack them. Now, of course, that wasn't what was in my mind. That wasn't what I said, and we will see that when or if we get to an actual trial. But the slight complexity here is that because they have been, as they've publicly said, monitoring me for many years, trying to have me sacked from my job at the University of Bristol at the time. They paid for students to threaten the university with legal action, and many other things that they've done, including, of course, reporting me to the police for alleged crimes which the police declined to pursue because they were obviously ludicrous. So all of that information wasn't given to the court when the court issued the summons against me. And so the judge in this case determined that they ought to go back and look at their files for the extent to which their staff and their trustees and their directors have been colluding against me. And we should remark at this point that, of course, their trustees and their directors are not a matter of public record. Unusually for a charity, they have a dispensation not to release the names of the trustees, and really very, very unusually for Companies House, they have a similar dispensation for their directors. So I don't know who it is that's prosecuting me. I don't know who the relevant controlling mind in the campaign against anti-Semitism is, and so that's all part of our case. So we now have 28 days for them to release this information, and for us to then go back to court on the date of the 15th of December, which would have been the first day of the trial, but the trial has now been pushed back on the 15th of December. We will hear the case being put by the CAA and by my lawyers. The CAA are putting in a case that I am a person of disreputable character. I believe that's the technical legal term, in order that they can bring in extra evidence against me, which is not relevant to the specific tweets. And we are applying for the case to be simply thrown out because it's a travesty and a joke. Now, the reason that I've said some of that at length is because this is all part, when you were talking about the three cases that Patrick referred to as the trifecta, to the case against Fahad Ansari, the case against the people who've been arrested for supporting Palestine Action, and indeed Dr. Rama's case. There are also, of course, lots of other cases, as we know, and this is an indication of just how seriously the British state and the people who are pressuring them, i.e. the regime in Tel Aviv, take Palestine solidarity activities in this country. They are deliberately trying to decapitate the anti-Zionist movement in this country and to silence us, to stop people from acting, for example, to de-prescribe Hamas or Palestine Action, to stop people like me and Dr. Rama and many others speaking out. Just the other day, I believe on Monday this week, we had the case of Sarah Wilkinson, who had been held under draconian house arrest conditions for months and months. The police had stolen her passport and had not even admitted that they had it. And she was concerned that they were going to remand her. But as it happened, what happened was that her bail conditions were lifted, which is good, and her passport was ordered to be returned to her by the police. So the judge didn't take any nonsense from the police about that. So that was a victory. My case was a victory. Also on Friday, the same day as my case, we had the other two victories, which was one, the decision that the government was not able to appeal the judicial review application by Palestine Action, so that will go forward. And we also had the case of the Instro Precision 10. That's the people who vandalized the Instro Precision factory, which of course is a subsidiary of Elbit, and they won a downgrading of their charges. So what we're seeing here is a massive push by the Israelis and the Zionists, and that they're running dogs in this country. And we're seeing the courts starting to throw out quite a lot of the ridiculous charges which are being brought. Not all of them, and that's a process which will continue. But I think we're starting to see the anti-Zionist case winning much more effectively, and I think we'll see that with Dr. Rama. Although, of course, the GMC have acted atrociously, and their attempts to stop her speaking, the fact that they put in some 2 pages of the police's charges against Dr. Rama entirely irrelevant. And also, of course, the fact that they're effectively trying to retry her on the same things which she was cleared of just 4 weeks ago. That I think probably will not go well for them in the end, because there is such outrage about them. And of course, it's all a question of the extent to which the law protects freedom of speech under the European Convention. And of course, when we look at that legislation, we know that it does protect it quite significantly, and many of these cases will fall. But nevertheless, the Zionists will keep trying to push again and again to have people silenced and to have them struck off or taken from their jobs, like, for example, Fahad or Dr. Al-Adwan. And so that's the position we're in at the moment. We're starting to win, but it's not going to be an easy road.
And David, there's a term in British legal practice called the vexatious litigant, and often cases are thrown out if the litigant is deemed to be vexatious. In other words, they're constantly badgering the court and stovepiping cases into the court. And normally the practice would be just to dismiss it, doesn't have standing. Is these Zionist cases and the ones that you're being targeted by, are they in danger of coming under this term, vexatious litigant, now?
They are in danger of coming under that. The question is whether the courts have the backbone and the wherewithal to simply reject the nonsense which they are being bombarded with. I mean, the organisations which are doing this, the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, the UK Lawyers for Israel, both of them involved in Dr. Al-Adwan's case. I mean, in her case, the GMC's legal submissions yesterday pushed back against her defence team, saying that they had been bounced into this by the Zionists. And they said, oh, well, no, that's not true. Our decision to do this was taken before the CAA lodged its letter before action. So therefore, we'd already taken the decision. And they go on to say, on the basis of complaints made by the CAA and the UK Lawyers for Israel. So they were, on the one hand, trying to deny what they actually admitted in the rest of the paragraph. They have been assaulted by Zionist groups and indeed by the Zionist assets in government. I'm talking in particular about West Streeting, who has disgracefully helped to bounce this case along. So yeah, we're facing the possibility of a collapse of these Zionist actions, but we're not going to get it just in a very straightforward way. It's going to be a question of multiple cases of defeat for them, at which point it will become clear how ridiculous and overreaching they've been.
Yeah, and that's your comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, So, final question, David. I'm just interested to know why you think that the courts are willing to reject these claims, because with the state being so pro-Zionist and so pro-Israel at the moment, is the judiciary really attempting to show some kind of independence here?
Well, I think that's the case. I mean, what you see with many of these cases is that they're so outrageous that they're only got to the stage that they have by the fact that the police are effectively in the pockets of the Zionists, and indeed, as we saw with the GMC case, the person who's made this decision to refer Dr. Al-Adwan to the tribunal has just parroted Zionist talking points. But when you get to the level of the judiciary, even the senior judiciary, who may be sympathetic to Zionism more generally, it's such a breach of the usual procedures that they feel in some cases they have to reject some of these overreaches.
David, thank you very much for joining us today. This has been a very interesting conversation, both, and thanks to Basil as well. So look, just to end this, I just want to show your crowdfunding page again here, so let's have a look at this, and I'll just bring the amount of money raised so far. So you're about 40% towards the goal of £50,000. So the link to this will be in the show notes. If anybody's able to offer David some support there, that would be massively appreciated. But thank you very much, David, for joining us. Okay, look, we gotta move on, and so I'm just going to say, first of all, thank you very much to everybody who is supporting the UK column and the work that we do. We do need your support. If you have a look on the front page of the UK column website here, there is an option to head over to the support page and the various opportunities or options to help us out. If you can't help us financially, please do help us by sharing any of the material you find on the website on social media, because that helps us deal with the censorship regime that we are under as well. Now, tonight at 7 p.m, Charles and I are speaking to Jerm once again for our weekly banter session. I think this is episode 18 already. It's quite amazing how quickly this is going by. So join us for that at 7 p.m. tonight. Issa Bloomy, I was speaking to earlier in the week, and this went out on the live stream at 1 p.m. yesterday. Sudan, Another Forgotten War. Very interesting conversation with Issa. And please, if you haven't seen that yet, do have a look at that and let's see and share it if you possibly can as well. And finally, sticking with the digital ID issue here, another week in Glasgow and another demonstration. Tomorrow at midday, meeting at midday at the bottom of Jamaica Street by the River Clyde near the Crystal Palace pub and Central Station. If you'd like to go and support this group of people that are out every weekend now to draw attention to this issue, then please do so. Okay, now let's move on then to the Bloody Sunday issue, because yesterday Soldier F was found not guilty of murder as a result of the killings of civilians in the Bogside in Londonderry on the 30th of January 1972. Now, we'll just put on screen an idea of what happened on the day. There was a civil rights march, but British soldiers of the 1st Battalion of the Parachute Regiment opened fire on apparently unarmed civilians taking part in this civil rights march on the Bogside. And of course, that's predominantly Catholic area of Derry. And the march had, as you can see on screen, well, as you will see in a second, it turned into a bit of a riot at some point. Now, the Paris shot a total of 26 people on the day, 13 of whom died. A 14th person died several months later. This was the highest number of people killed in a single incident during the 30 years of the Troubles. But the thing is that the marchers killed and injured, they were unarmed, but there were others there as well, including Martin McGuinness. And now the Savile inquiry, and that's not anything to do with Jimmy Savile, that was the judicial inquiry into the Bloody Sunday incident. They found that McGuinness had been armed with a Thompson machine gun on the day, and though they could not say definitively that McGuinness had fired the first shot, now there had been witness testimony given to the Savile inquiry that McGuinness had himself said that he had fired the first shot, but he, when the Savile inquiry was taking place, he was Education Secretary in Northern Ireland at the time. He vehemently denied having said that. The colonel in charge of the British operation that day said on the day, as part of this ITN report that you're seeing on screen at the moment, that there were 3 shooters and that's why the Paris opened fire. The Savile inquiry rejected that account when it was repeated at the inquiry because of lack of evidence. But just to give an idea of what happened, we have another little bit of video here that we want to just show. So let's have a look at this.
The organisers of this civil rights march promised that they would be non-violent. The army have said throughout the day that they hope to use minimum force, but 3 hours after the procession began, this has ended up, as dusk comes onto the Bogside, as the worst ever confrontation between the army and the Catholic people of the Craigan and Bogside.
Do not fire back for the moment, unless you identify a positive target. Hello.
Don't know what your thoughts are so far.
Well, I just obviously the amount of time that's passed and how long this has been litigated is quite an extraordinary thing in itself.
Absolutely, but I want to direct your attention to 2 articles published by John Waters on his Substack. He didn't write these, but he has published them, and the first one is this one. Sorry, we'll go back to that one. I've mentioned this one before, how British intelligence planned the Irish Troubles of 1968 to 1998 and used provo fake patriots to achieve the ruination of Ireland. Now, the conclusion of this article says that curious facts includes an Englishman and probably MI5+6 agent becoming the first provisional IRA chief of staff in 1969 to 73, and Martin McGuinness being the provisional IRA second in command in Derry on Bloody Sunday, aged only 21 in January 1972. It goes on to say that in May 2006, about 8 years after the Good Friday Agreement, ex-British FRU agent Ian Hurst alleged that McGuinness was and remained a British MI6 agent, codenamed J118. And he goes on to say that the only logical explanation is that MI5 and MI6 created the provisional IRA in December 1969 as a civilian targeting offshoot from the more sensible, strictly military official IRA, and deployed it as a controlled opposition to study new terrorist warfare methods and better prepare its Zionist war on terror, already planned from circa 1960. Now, part 2 of this article has now been published, headlined, well, you can see on screen, the Para MI6 Conspiracy Part 2. And in it, the writer talks about the compartmentalized cell structure of the provisional IRA, which, quotes, made it semi-hierarchical or semi-autonomous, but this only made the British regime more intent on infiltrating all levels of Para, not just the top, as shown below. Now, he goes on to say that you're free to view the provisional IRA as either just extensively penetrated by MI5 and MI6, or else as a full agency of MI5 or MI6. The Para was linked to drug running, and the Bank of England was its main vehicle to launder drug profits over £1 billion. All the evidence proves beyond doubt that MI5 and 6 ran both sides of the Irish troubles of 1968 to 98 and kept them going for an incredible 30 years. Today, the Irish people are split into two main factions or schools of thought. About 70% of people believe that Para was a full agency of MI5 and 6 since its inception in December 1969. About 30% believe that Para and Sinn Féin were merely undermined by MI5 and 6 blackmail spies and agents. And so it's a great example, I think, of how gangs and counter gangs are created, how they're used, how they're manipulated, and so on. I'm just going to bring on screen Kitson's book again. We mentioned it the last time we talked about this, Gangs and Counter Gangs. And, you know, in this, he's arguing that when insurgents enjoy the support, or at least acquiescence of population, that conventional military tactics aren't sufficient. And therefore, he's talking about a system of intelligence gathering, infiltration, deception, turning insurgents or sympathizers into trackers and informers, creating pseudo gangs and insurgent groups, and conducting psychological and covert operations on populations. Now, that book is quite historical in context because it's talking about Mau Mau activities, rebellion, and so on. There was another book.
Kenya.
If we just bring this back on screen, the other book, which is more analytical about the actual techniques themselves, is this one, Low Intensity Operations, Subversion, Insurgency, and Peacekeeping. I just strongly recommend that people read both of those.
Well, these many will argue, Mike, these are the blueprints for Al-Qaeda, for how to design and operate Al-Qaeda cells. False flags are a big part of that deception and a big part of those staged provocations. So false flags, propaganda, all of these things, spreading lies about 40 beheaded babies, that sort of thing. This is all part of that practice. So it required reading Gangs and Counter Gangs and Low Intensity Operations. You know, if you look at history and you discount the role of the state in covert operations and subterfuge, it's a totally different version of history.
Right.
And constantly our establishment, our education system, our media, our politicians want to strip out the role of clandestine agencies in Western countries. And if you do that, you get a completely different narrative. And that's the narrative that's foisted upon us constantly. But you'll be more well equipped to understand these things if you read books like this.
Absolutely. Now, let's move on to Israel. And, they held a vote in the Knesset. What was the vote about, Patrick?
No press coverage for this one, Mike. We'll bring this up on screen. Surprise, surprise. You probably haven't heard about it because everybody's blanked it in the Western mainstream media. Israeli parliament advances bill to annex the occupied West Bank. Isn't this the same occupied West Bank. Trump said, that'll never happen. It's never going to happen. I won't let it happen. Well, looks like it's happening. But J.D. Vance was basically caught on his back heels here. And I think people should look in and see if he's doing okay this week. Here's Vance responding to this.
When I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
Do you think Israel cares what J.D. Vance thinks about annexing the West Bank?
Or Trump, for that matter.
Or carpet bombing Gaza or ethnically cleansing Gaza? They don't care, obviously. So they're living in a delusional fantasy land there in Washington. But we'll keep an eye on that story.
Yes, indeed. Okay, let's move on to Trump and Putin and Ukraine and so on. So Donald Trump announced on the 16th of October that he and Vladimir Putin would meet in Budapest in Hungary within 2 weeks or so for a second summit. That's following the summit that we reported on a few weeks ago. The announcement came the same day he met with Zelensky in Washington. And Trump claimed that meeting was very cordial. Was it, Patrick?
Well, I don't know. But certainly it hasn't been a follow-up meeting. So maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was. Who knows? Right.
Well, indeed. So anyway, this appears to have created immediate panic amongst European leaders. And within a couple of days, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte appeared in Washington to discuss, quotes, NATO's support for securing an end to the war in Ukraine and a just and lasting peace. Well, we know that that's a lie, but anyway, it sort of highlighted the role that NATO plays in providing, or at least he was attempting to highlight the role that NATO plays in providing military assistance to Ukraine that supports Ukraine's ability to defend itself and deter against future aggression. This is the kind of language that they use. So this includes, of course, aid through the prioritized Ukraine requirements list, through which US equipment funded by NATO is supplied to Ukraine. Now, Rutte said that his NATO colleagues, quote, want to help Trump bring peace between Ukraine and Russia. I suspect that's another lie, but let's just have a quick look at how he wanted to help.
Mr. President, can you tell us a little bit about why you're elevating sanctions against Russia right now?
I just felt it was time. We've waited a long time. I thought that we'd go long before the Middle East.
Do you have a timeline for when you think the war is going to be over because of your leadership?
No, I don't have a timeline. You can't have in war, it's hard to have a timeline. You know.
What the president is doing today with these sanctions is putting more pressure, of course, on both parties, in this case on Russia. It's all about changing the calculus, making sure that Putin understands that the president's vision this weekend of having a ceasefire, stop where they are, as you literally said, that this has to be step one now. And for him to really accept that vision and to come to the table.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, we've got a bit of a preemptive comment there about sanctions. We'll come on to that in a second. But no sooner had that meeting happened with Rutte absolutely encouraging more support for Ukraine and the continuation of the war effectively. No sooner had that meeting happened than Trump announced, we cancelled the meeting with President Putin. It just didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we wanted to get, so I cancelled it. And then he said a bit less convincingly, but we'll do it in the future. Well, will they? That remains to be seen. So this was despite telling the press just 24 hours previously that he had not cancelled his plan to meet with Putin, but would announce something in the next 2 days. So he certainly announced something, but it wasn't what he was suggesting he was going to announce.
Well, I didn't check the press releases this morning, Mike. He could have changed his mind by this morning, but maybe by Monday he'll flip-flop again. Yeah. This is how Trump is working. Absolutely. But as we just heard in the video clip, also announced while Rutte was there, are the new sanctions against Russia. Now, it's true that sanctions, the sanctions that are basically announced almost daily now have been pretty ineffective so far. But Patrick, maybe these have teeth because they're sanctioning
Russia's two largest oil producers directly. That's Rosneft and Lukoil. And between them, they export 3.1 million barrels of oil per day. And the biggest customers of these companies are China and India. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, this is serious. That's between Rosneft and Lukoil, that's 5% of the global oil output. This is a huge amount. And prices also, well, as we'll show on screen here, prices have spiked immediately on the announcement of sanctions. So that's a significant 5% rise. That's around about $5 a barrel or something. Who knows? But I think right now it's interesting, Mike. We look at the oil markets that Brent crude, even with this price spike, is trading at $66 per barrel.
Right.
This is not particularly high in comparison to previous years,
right.
But it's interesting. Well, we'll come back to what Russia thinks about this in a moment. But, well, President Putin is defiant. This is Reuters here, defiant after Trump sanctions Russian oil companies over Ukraine. And yes, he's talking, as you mentioned, Mike, Lukoil and Rosneft here. These are the big hitters in the Russian oil industry. And here's what Putin said, particularly regarding Trump's threats and the sanctions. He's saying, this is, of course, an attempt to put pressure on Russia, but no self-respecting country and no self-respecting people ever decides anything under pressure. And we've spoken about this game theory and sanctions previously, haven't we? It never works. You cannot change the behavior of a target country if there is an implicit threat of aggression down the road. So there's no good faith in the negotiation. So you're not going to change Russia's behavior. What it will do probably, Mike, is cause turmoil in the global economy. It might even further raise the price of oil. And I'll show you who benefits from that in a minute. But this is serious, though. Look at this. This is China. China's state oil majors suspend purchases of Russian oil due to sanctions. Now, this is a major thing for Russia. It's definitely going to cause tightening in the short term. And it doesn't end there. Russia at war faces double trade Trump ultimatum and a hit to oil sales to India. So the big players, as you said, Mike, China and India. But what's interesting, Russia says, Mike, that experts are saying that the rise in oil prices that's expected, that guess who said this? Amos Hochstein said that Russia will recover its losses because of the rise in global price. So they're going to end up with the same amount of money potentially by the end of this. That's Amos Hochstein, Biden's oil advisor and Middle East envoy for Trump, saying that. So, be that as it may.
Well, look, Trump was asked about, you talked about Putin's response there a second ago. Trump was asked about that. So let's just have a listen to his response.
Thank you. President Putin basically said today that Russia is immune from U.S. sanctions. He said that it would not impact the Russian economy in any serious way. Is he wrong?
I'm glad he feels that way. That's good. I'll let you know about it in 6 months from now. Okay, let's see how it all works out.
So how do you think it's all going to work out?
Well, Trump's confident that it's all going to fall apart in 6 months and he can do a victory lap and declare that he is a stable genius that we all suspected he was. We'll see. We'll see. How have sanctions done against Russia over the last?
Well, they've done very well for Russia. It hasn't hurt Russia in the least, has it?
So I don't know. Would you bet against Russia with their record of busting sanctions in the last 4 years? I wouldn't.
Well, yeah, indeed. Well, to make matters worse, and what I know you're probably going to describe as a Nord Stream moment in a second, Patrick, in parallel with all of this, oil refineries in Romania and Hungary were blown up apparently by saboteurs because both of them process Russian oil. That's Hungary and Romania. Now, Ukraine is being blamed, just like Nord Stream. But remember, Trump and Putin's meeting was supposed to be in Budapest. But I'm sure that's all just a coincidence. Well, certainly Kirill Dmitriev here is suggesting that it's not a coincidence. He was tweeting this out a couple of days ago. Hungary under attack for working on a peace summit, ? I think that is a good question to ask.
Yeah, and this is also coming on the heels of the attack on the Druzhba pipelines, which were attacked just last month or the weeks before, and those were the pipelines carrying oil product to Hungary and to Slovakia, and of course Ukraine being the culprit here. The details of this are in a stunning analysis here by Freddie Ponton at 21st Century Wire. Hungary and Romania refinery fires, sabotage, or negligence. Well, it looks like it's pointing towards negligence. And he's saying that this is basically like the Nord Stream sabotage, pretty much the same play there. And is it Ukraine? Is it NATO? Is it British Special Forces? We don't know. We might find out at some point. But on the Nord Stream, it's so convenient that this happens exactly the moment that Germany raises an Interpol, probably an Interpol or red notice for this Ukrainian saboteur of Nord Stream, allegedly, in Poland. And Poland basically doesn't want to extradite him to Germany.
Right.
Those are two EU countries. So Poland's basically said, stuff it to Germany and letting this guy go. So I personally, my feeling is this is the Ukrainian diver story is a red herring story for Baltops, the fact that NATO did the Nord Stream sabotage over the course of 3 drills that summer and fall of 2022. But this conveniently puts this one right under the rug. It's just incredible how they have managed to engineer this one. So it just as Nord Stream is just being completely deep sixed right now on ice, then they go and hit all these other refineries and pipelines. So I mean, come on, there's a lot more going on here. We'll get to the bottom of it eventually. It would be a shame if some damning evidence surfaced about Nord Stream over the next 6 months. That would be so unfortunate. But anyway, we'll keep our eyes on it.
Okay, and where does that take us then?
Well, it takes us back to Hungary. And look at this. Viktor Orban's coming out swinging on this. He tweeted this out here yesterday, the day of the Budapest Peace March, largest peace march in Europe, right there in Hungary. Today, we send a message to the whole world. Hungary says no to war. We will not die for Ukraine. Wow, strong words. We'll not send our children to the slaughterhouse at Brussels' command. And this is one of the images that came up there. Translated here is, we won't die for Ukraine. That's from that peace rally right there. Here's Viktor Orban giving a speech afterwards at the rallying point. Listen closely. He is evoking very strong historic European themes. Watch.
The largest political force of Hungary.
Ma nem vagyunk német megszállás alatt. Brüsszel eddig nem tudta elfoglalni Budapestet. Most nem vagyunk egy birodalom töltelék népe, akit golyófogóként használnak az első vonalban. Urai vagyunk a saját helyzetünknek. Emlékezzetek, az első világháborúban elvesztettünk 660 000. A másodikban 850 000 életet. Ez 1,5 millió ember. Ha ők nem vesztek volna oda, és megszülethettek volna a gyerekeik és az unokáik, ma nem kellene aggódnunk a népességfogyás miatt. Ez még egyszer nem fordulhat elő. Az első és a második nagy háborúból nem tudtunk, de ebből a mostaniból kimaradunk.
It's very strong words.
Yes.
So he's evoking World War I and World War II. And basically, do you see any of the European leaders making that sort of strong statement against a war? He's right on the front line as well. Isn't it interesting? All of the hawkish voices are coming from far afield. I find that interesting.
But he won't be making any friends in Brussels, as he said in that. It's
he doesn't have any left anyway.
Well, that's true.
He's got nothing to lose. So Viktor Orban, I have to give him credit for taking the lead on this. It's quite an amazing story.
Well, look, we mentioned earlier that the potential of Trump meeting Putin for a second time was causing panic in Europe. Well, here's another example of it. Well, admittedly, this is a Bloomberg report, and they're citing the usual unnamed sources, or at least people familiar with the matter. So they said that Ukraine and Europe have prepared a 12-point peace plan that's going to rule out any territorial concessions to Russia. It is imitating to some degree Trump's Board of Peace for Gaza, because they're calling it a peace board. And it'll include a peace board, which they expect Trump to also chair, by the way. And they plan on sending a contingent to Washington this week, I guess, to meet with Trump. And it apparently includes a ceasefire along the current front lines, Ukraine would get security guarantees. So we're back to this security guarantee boots on the ground thing, European military providing peacekeeper role of some kind, and fast-tracked EU accession. Wasn't EU accession one of the problems that Russia had?
Not necessarily. I mean, it probably would be now, but it was mainly the NATO issue. But does the EU want to inherit this basket case, this truncated orphaned rump state? I don't know. I'm not sure. Peace board, Mike. This sounds like this kind of in absentia. They've just formalized the propaganda talking points into a new board organization.
Hey, look, they might put Tony Blair in charge of it. Well, how could it go wrong?
Yeah, then it'll really be successful. Yeah, I say put Blair in charge of this peace board.
Yeah. Anyway, look, they're saying that the Russia, Crimea, the area of Crimea that Russia considers itself Russian since 2014. Also, Lugansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia would not be recognized as Russian under this. And Russia and Ukraine would have to negotiate, quotes, the governance of occupied territories. So they're attempting to bring this term in. Where have we heard that before? So they're attempting to sort of demonize this in some way, it seems, by using language like occupied territories. There's been hypocrisy in that, I think.
There is, but the international law that it depends how many countries recognize the new state. So they're trying to basically put it into the same category as Kosovo's in.
Right.
Kosovo is not recognized by Serbia as a state. It's a NATO-created state that was created at the barrel of a gun. Okay, it's a pseudo-state created by NATO, but it's not recognized by all its neighbors and not recognized by all countries in the world. But I think probably more people will recognize eventually Crimea and the new territories. Well, Russia recognizes it. That's probably the most consequential, because it's part of the Russian Federation. But Russia's allies may end up recognizing them as well. But they have the right to self-determination under UN Article 1, I believe, and the right to self-defense when they were being attacked by the Ukrainian military under Petro Poroshenko and Zelensky, and that's UN Article 51. So does the UN Charter apply to everybody on this planet, or only people the U.S. and NATO want it to apply to? That's kind of a fundamental question.
I think it's supposed to be the former, and in reality, it's the latter. But look, this so-called peace plan, it's designed to fail. It seems to me it's designed to fail. But of course, it's just like is going on in Gaza at the moment, also designed to fail. Ultimately,
when they have a new Gaza humanitarian organization coming in that they want to do, which is the same as the old one,
right?
Basically, and Trump wants to put boots on the ground in Gaza. That I can't imagine what could possibly go wrong there. Sounds like such a great idea.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, look, let's finish today on the issue of digital ID, because earlier today, our illustrious, lovely leader, Keir Starmer, the man that we all love to respect and will really be enthusiastic to vote for him next time round, he pushed out a little video clip this morning to tell us how great it is. Let's have a look at this.
So I'm in Brighton today. This is Barclays Bank, and I've been talking to customers about digital ID, and they're really enthusiastic. It'll have your basic information on it. For everything other than proving you've got a right to work, it won't be mandatory. You don't have to have it, but you can have it. You can use it for anything that requires identification, and there are lots of things. If you want to rent, for example, if you want to apply for a mortgage, if you want to get your child into primary school, there's a catchment area, and you've got to show where you live, proving who you are, what your date of birth is, will just be able to be done with digital ID. They're really up for it, and I think once you understand just how much easier it'll make life, so many more people will be too.
So, Patrick, I don't know if you noticed, but what was missing from that little video clip?
Tell me.
Well, anybody that he was speaking to, there was no comment from any. They didn't get any comment from anybody telling us how great this was. We have to take his word for it that everybody in there thought it was a great thing. But I thought it was interesting they held it at Barclays Bank, because Barclays is the most pro-Zionist bank with close links to Israel in the UK. So that may be just a coincidence. But I don't know if you noticed the lie there as well, or at least someone was lying, because when he pushed Lisa Nandy out to promote this thing on the day that it was announced, she said it would be mandatory for everyone in the UK to have it. wouldn't be mandatory for them to show it if they were a British citizen. It was only if you're a foreign national that would be mandatory to show it in the event that you were being asked for employment status and so on. But in that little video clip, he said it wouldn't be mandatory if you're a British citizen. So is it that he just doesn't know what's going on, or are they just not really certain what the policy is?
Playing fast and loose, really, with the policy, Mike,
Yes.
being a little bit vague and arbitrary. He said something interesting, though. You need it it'll be great if you're going from neighborhood to neighborhood to prove that you live somewhere. Kind of reminds me of, let me see your papers.
Yes.
It really does. And that's why people are against it. What happened to British common law? Is that no longer a thing?
That has not been a thing for quite some time now. I think the fact that juries are not being allowed on the 26-minute trials is a perfect example of how common law is thrown in the bin quite some time ago.
Setting a precedent there. We'll talk about that with Basil Valentine after during extra about this model of these speed dating show trials.
Yes,
that they're trying to, without juries, that they're trying to pioneer here. That's what it looks like to me, a beta test for bigger dissent.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, not that if they put them in prison, they've got anywhere to put them, but that's a whole other issue that I'm sure they'll resolve some other way. But look, we're going to leave it there for today. I'm going to say thank you very much to everybody that's been watching. Thanks to David Miller, to Basil Valentine, to Patrick, of course. We will be back in a couple of minutes if you're a UK column member for UK Column News Extra. Otherwise, Germ tonight at 7 p.m. Don't miss it, and have a great weekend. We'll see you 1 p.m. as usual on Monday. See you then. Bye-bye.